This is a 4-part seminar about getting started bass fishing. John Blank is a bass pro angler and one of my associate guides. John gave this seminar at Cabela's in Tulalip, Washington, and it is packed with great information to get you started bass fishing in the Pacific Northwest. In part 1, John will talk about the equipment you need to get started bass fishing.
Today I'm going to really talk to you about the fishery here, bass fishing, and try to demystify, if you will, or give you some pointers on what you need to fish with. I could take my Plano tackle boxes over the years that I've acquired of tackle, and I could probably stack them as high as myself. My boat, it holds about 20 of the big Plano tackle boxes. When I tournament fish, I'm fishing for money, every fish counts. If I were to boil down my tackle and what I actually use throughout a year, I can boil it down to probably one box. Yet, I still carry all the variety because there may be a chance that, I can get a different bite off a different color on a different type of lure. But what I'm going to do today is walk you through an introduction of bass fishing. Smallmouth fishery is phenomenal in Western Washington. Washington State has a Columbia River tributary, which ranked in Bass Magazine as one of the top 10 destinations in the United States to catch bass. Got Potholes Reservoir in eastern Washington. You got Banks Lake. You come over to the west side. Lake Washington is a fabulous fishery. Samish. Come up north, Lake Goodwin. I can go out in Lake Goodwin and catch 4 to 6 pound smallmouth bass all day long. You go up a little further, you got Terrell, is a really great largemouth fishery, all the way up to Lake Whatcom, which is probably one of the best untapped smallmouth fisheries that we have in this state. So there's a lot of opportunity to do it. I got into bass fishing, and it's probably been about 15 years ago, and I was an atypical Northwest fisherman. Grew up over in Sequim, Washington, had a trout pole in my hand, would go fish the streams and the lakes, would steelhead fish, would go out in the salt, fish for salmon, so on and so forth. Moved over here and just was kind of looking for something different. Always had the crankbaits in the tackle box, played around with bass, but it was until I fished in Lake Goodwin. And it was a terrible, nasty April afternoon. It was about dark, and I put on this bluegill crankbait, and I threw it out in the rocks, and I was using my little flimsy trout rod, and bam, this fish hit this crankbait like there was no tomorrow, and I was fighting it all over the place. Finally got it to the boat, and it's like a 4-pound smallie, and I'm just like, holy cow. My buddy's with me, and he's like, yeah, that'll never happen again. Throw it back up to the rocks. Bam, hooked another fish back to back, and then I was hooked for life. I went from a little aluminum boat that wasn't very expensive into a big fancy fiberglass boat where now I chase them all around the country. But anyway, let's take a look at topics to get you into bass fishing and really what you need. Rod and reel selection, while trout gear will work. You want to, if you're going to get in and seriously play with bass, you're going to want to get more bass-specific rods that you can trout fish with. Bass rods are going to have more backbone to them, and I brought some of my rods to show you a little later on so you can see what I use, but definitely making sure you get the right rod and reel. Line selection, okay, you're going to be upsizing your line a little bit. I'll talk about mono, I'll talk about copolymer, I'll talk about fluorocarbon, which techniques you should use which, because they all have their said purpose. Then I'm going to go into core tackle that I think if I were to start out and if I had this seminar starting out in bass fishing, if someone told me these 4 key things that catch fish really well that I'll share with you, it would have probably saved me $1,500, $2,000 as I started to get into the sport to know what I should spend my money on. And then water temperature and trends. Just like hunting and patterning an animal, a whitetail has a bedding area has its feeding area, it has its staging area. Bass are the same way. They're a predatory fish. The time of year is going to predicate where that fish is going to locate themselves on. So I'll talk about water temperature and seasonality and what to look for as you fish for bass. So rod and reel selection. First and foremost, a medium light to medium heavy, 6 to 7 foot rod is ideal. Whether you want to use a spin cast rod or you want to use a bait cast rod, either one is fine. I personally can fill the whole top deck of my boat with rods. You see it on TV with the bass guys. You don't need to do that, okay, but you need to have at least a couple rods rigged, because what happens is sometimes the fish will short strike and then you got to follow up with a different bait to catch that same fish. So it's nice having another rod available with a different technique of lure. So at least a couple rods handy, definitely. I use mostly 6.5 foot rods to 7.5, depending on the technique and what I'm fishing for with the lure. If you're getting into it and you want a good entry-level bass fishing rod, St. Croix's Mojo series, they're a very good entry-level rod. If you were to go on a guided trip in my boat, that's what you would fish it with, is a Mojo series. They run about $100. When I hold them side to side, aside from weight and a little bit of sensitivity, there's not much difference between that rod and the rods like I'll show you here that are $350 a pop. So really good quality rod. Graphite rods are preferred, unless, and this would probably really be the only time I'd go there, is if I'm throwing crankbaits, fishing with a fiberglass rod that's going to give you more of articulated bend so you don't rip those treble hooks out of the fish's mouth. Aside from throwing a crankbait, everything graphite rod, the more sensitive you can get, the better. Because if you look at a bass and what it does is it oftentimes doesn't bite it like a trout, you know, where they come through and hit it as they swim. They come up to it, stop, flare their gills, and they suck it in. And it's feeling that subtlety. And when I take a lot of new anglers out on the boat, one of my biggest things is you got to watch the line. And because that bass will grab it and it's going to hold on to it for a while. Heck, it could even swim a bit. And, you know, if you're not paying attention, it's going to spit it back out. So learning when that fish picks up that bait and having a graphite rod definitely helps. Spinning reels. When I'm looking at my spinning rod setup, you're going to want a medium spinning reel is ideal. Smallmouth bass, pound for pound, are going to fight harder than anything that you've felt. Especially if you're down in the Columbia River, a fish that lives in the current, it's going to drag you all around. You're going to want that power to get that fish up to the boat. I personally like the Pflueger Supreme, the 8235. It's a medium-sized reel. I brought one up here if you want to look at it. It's under $100, 10-pound drag minimum. Okay, there's going to be times where that fish is going to be going into the rocks or into the brush, and you're going to want to hold that fish and pull it out. And then it holds about 185 yards of 8-pound test line. So that's kind of your atypical spinning setup. Now, Cabela's makes some great medium spinning reels too, or you might have some at home, but good quality there. Casting reels, low profile bait casting reel is what I like, especially if you're holding it in your hand all day. It's easier to work with than a round reel. A retrieve of a 5-3-1 or 7-1 is ideal. If you're throwing crankbaits, especially if they're a deeper diving crankbait, the 5-3-1 is easier on you versus a higher speed just because of the resistance. Abu Garcia makes what they call the winch, and it's made specifically for throwing crankbaits. But getting your bait cast reel set up and the right reel is great. Abu Garcia, the Aura, runs right around $100. You pick them up, both of those reels on sale for like $79, and you can put a package together for under $200 for rod and reel. Your bait caster, you're going to want a little more drag, okay? Because some of your techniques that you're fishing, you're going to be putting more pressure on that fish. You're going to fish with a little heavier line on a bait casting reel, so you want that heavier drag. So let's talk a little bit about line selection and what type of line should I use on my spinning rod, and what kind of line should I use on my casting rod. 8 to 10 pound test when it comes to my spinning line is what I use. And this is most applications. There's exceptions to every rule, but talking in generalization, 8 to 10 pound test. Mono or copolymer are the best all around. Okay, they're going to be limp enough, they're going to sit on the spool, they're going to handle very easily for you, and you're not going to have to fight it. Fluorocarbon, on the other hand, and many of you are familiar with fluorocarbon, it's a great line. It's a more sensitive with less stretch than mono or copolymer. However, its properties are more to the lines where it's a stiffer line. It's not going to lay on your spinning reel as well. And when I use fluorocarbon on my spinning reel setup, especially when I drop shot fish or my tube bait rod where I have presentations under the water, you got to use line conditioner. Otherwise, I remember the first time I spooled up a spool of fluorocarbon and made one cast, and as soon as that lure hit the water, it kept jumping off the line, and I had a big ball mess. And it's like, I just spent $20 for what? You know, and I just ruined my day. But I didn't know how to handle it. Now I could spool it on. I put it on with line conditioner, and it performs almost as well as mono as far as laying on my reel. When it comes to my underwater presentation, it's more abrasion resistant, and the fish won't see it. So I get more bites out of fluorocarbon if I'm fishing under the water. It's not for top water use because fluorocarbon sinks versus mono and copolymer that'll sit up on top of the surface. And then, as I stated, line conditioner. And when you're looking at line conditioners, there's two I use. One is Real Magic that they carry here in Cabela's. Don't use this on fluorocarbon. Okay, it says right on it, it hurts the properties of it. But Kevin Van Dam makes a lure and line conditioner that you can put on mono, copolymer, and fluorocarbon. It's great for keeping your reels clean. It doesn't leave scent. It doesn't make a mess. Both of these are good. This is fine all around until I hit fluorocarbon, and then I go to this one. So definitely think about line conditioner if you've never used it. You ever had that reel that sat in the closet and you get it out and you go to take fishing and you know you're fighting the line all day long? Put line conditioner on it and let it soak in there the night before. Shoot it one more time once you go out in the morning. You won't have any problems. That line will lay right on that spool, come off nice, and it takes away the memory of the line and puts it back to the original state. So, yeah, both that and on your bait caster, you know how sometimes it won't want to lay really nice and it gets rigid in through there. That line conditioner makes it limp and it oils the line essentially and puts a film on it and lets it lay really nice. Yeah, so let me grab a rod out of here real quick for you guys so you can see. So this is my spinner bait rod here. So if I'm gonna, and this has copolymer line on it. So when I'm using line conditioner here, I just take it, spray it, soak it in there, hit the backside, and then I take a paper towel. This doesn't hurt your reel at all. It actually is used to clean it. I take and spray it on a microfiber rag and wipe my rods to keep it nice and clean. But it'll really make your line properly. It softens it up and makes it hold in there. It doesn't matter if you're bass fishing or salmon fishing or trout fishing. This is a great investment to have.
So does that mean you don't use swivel? I always thought it twisted because I didn't have a swivel.
That can be, okay, and it depends on your technique. Now, I'll grab a spinning rod as I get into, well, I'm talking spinning rods right now, so I might as well grab it because I'll answer your question here. Then I'll leave these rods up here if you guys want to look at what I fish with. So, people often fight spinning reels, and you see all these line twists start to happen. When you're fishing with a spinning reel and you cast, okay? You've made your cast out there. You can see, and this is fluorocarbon line. You can see it's got a little more memory in it than a mono that would lay straight. This has been spooled up for a long time. But a lot of people do this. Okay? You know what I just did?
Overlap.
I just put a twist in my line. Will you start turning your bail over manually like this and starting to reel? Look at what happens. See that? And that's fluorocarbon. But that's from not flipping your bail over properly. So when I fish and I cast, and I got snagged up. Got a fish, got sharp hooks. So I've casted, right? My bail's open. So instead of grabbing the handle and giving her a crank, and now I crank, I manually click that bail over. And if you're fighting line twists, it's because you got slack in your line and you're going to fishing. Click it over with your hand. And then, take up a little bit of slack and then reel down on it, and you'll have no issues whatsoever with line twists, or not nearly as much. Now, if you're fishing a Cinco's over time, if you fish it, say, for 10 hours straight, can twist your line up a little bit. Line conditioner. Just spray it with line conditioner, and that'll take some of that up. And feel free as we go through, if you got questions, just throw them at me.
That wraps it up for part 1. Make sure you move on to part 2, where John will finish talking about equipment and move on to the all-important core tackle needs.